afternoon, everybody. Ooh, this is it's interesting. It's very interesting. So, what am I doing here? A little introduction. My name is Gabe Roggiolani. I've been in this country for 30 years now. I moved here when I was 21, 22 years old. And a little bit of my background. I come from a small town, about the size half the family, but very wealthy. Not very diverse at the time that I was growing up. People looked like me, they talked like me, the culture was kind of close culture. On the west coast of Tuscany, beautiful area, really didn't miss anything. And everything was available to me, it really was. So I was unaware of other people's struggles for the majority of my life. I did well in high school, joined the military. I did well in the military as well, but again, I grew up in a culture that was kind of a closed culture at the time. A lot has changed since 30 years ago. You all have to admit that, with the internet and everything else now, we're exposed to a lot more. But I wasn't prepared for what happened afterwards when I moved to this country. And nevertheless, I'm very grateful to be here, and I'm an American citizen now as well. And I have 2 citizenships and a business of my own, and beautiful kids that you guys have met. I'm very, very fortunate. But nevertheless, moved here when I was 22. Followed the woman that I loved. I didn't come over here because of looking for asylum or having financial issues or any of that. I just came over here because my wife was the 5th of 5 kids. Her parents were much older than mine, and when we decided to get married after 2.5 years of dating, it was just much easier to be here close to them than starting a life in Italy. Nevertheless, I moved here, and within the first few months I realized that my world was to be shaken up real good. The confident young man that I used to be, I'm 5'10", 22 years old, strong kid, wavy blonde hair I used to have, blue eyes, and speaking, thinking that I'm speaking 2 languages and doing well. I've accomplished quite a few things in my young age, and I did them well. I was a good kid, and I came over here, and all of a sudden I found myself struggling to even find a job, and I was, a legal immigrant. I had my green card, and everything was done appropriately, but the fact that I spoke a broken English pretty much marked me everywhere I went. Even within the family I married. Believe it or not, there were a couple of individuals in that family that felt kind of a pleasure to put me down every time a word would come out. Kind of strange. They would use it as something fun to do at a family gathering. And I would say, yeah, there's always a couple of people like that. That wasn't too much hard to take. The hard part to take was that the rest of the family would join in and laugh about it. It might not seem like much, but when you are alone in a new country, in a new environment, trying to make something of yourself, and your support group becomes the one that laughs at you, it breaks you. It makes you feel less than. And therefore, many other things crumble after that. Your confidence in being able to do things, confidence in being able to go to college or do something more with your life. Other people's words, and that's why I like that passage, other people's words have a weight that many of us wish to deny, but depending on where they're coming from, they can be very heavy. And they can change us. And they can change us for the better sometimes when they are words of, constructive words, but they can change us for the worse if they use any other way. So I come here, and my little world of privilege is shattered now. And I'm by myself, I'm married, trying to build a family. We went to buy a house, and the builder wouldn't talk to me. He would talk to my wife, but he wouldn't talk to me. he just wouldn't talk to foreigners. You know, he just didn't feel like I was smart enough to understand what he was doing. That understanding that the belief that somebody that doesn't speak as well as you do is not as good as you are is something that hopefully is changing now. By the time I came here, I found it rooted in everywhere I went. When I started looking for work, all I could find was labor, manual labor. Even though I had a high school degree with a couple of years of education in college, I had an associate, and I had served in the military. And all I was offered was, you know, to be a painter or a day laborer or anything like that, and there was no even interview. It was just dismissed. You hadn't been here, you know, you hadn't been here long enough, you don't speak well enough. When I finally found a job through, it humbled me quite a bit, and not in a good way, but I finally found a job in a manufacturing plant that a friend of the family was the plant manager. So he was the top of the pyramid in that plant. So he got me a job. He basically pushed me through and got me a job. Even within that environment, there were layers that I couldn't pass through. The 600 employees there, about 300 of them were immigrants, Portuguese, and they all had the lowest of the jobs. And then as you went upwards, you would find the American-borns that would have the customer service jobs and the sales rep jobs and, you know, the administrative jobs. I tried to break that ceiling after 6 years of working there, and I still couldn't, even though after all the hard work and going to college. I went to Bridgewater State College. I went there for about 3.5 years. The only reason why I didn't finish was because I also got my master's license as a plumber in the meantime. So I just picked one profession over another. I was going for an accounting and finance degree. By the way, all these stories that I'm saying, just little snippets of what was going on through the years. So there's quite a few occasions where where I found myself hitting these walls that I never thought I would. While I was in the job, I finally moved from the floor, the plant floor, where I was, you know, packing books and working on the machines, to a customer service position. Broke that ceiling. I was the youngest one to take a position there. I was 28 years old. All the other customer service reps were older than I was, but I finally broke through. I'd worked for this plant now for 4.5 years. I'd proven myself. I was going to college and I didn't have any kids yet, and I was really putting all my effort in it. After 1.5 years in that position, I collected 27 letters of customers and clients that were so pleased with my work that they actually sent me a note saying, "Thank you so much, you've done so well," and so forth. And when I went looking for a raise for what I was doing, because I started as a customer rep at the bottom of the pay grade, I was presented with a couple of people from Manhattan that had complained that they didn't want to have a foreign-speaking customer service rep, and they wanted to have somebody else. So the 27 letters that I had compared to the 2 complaints, unwritten, just spoken to, made me miss my promotion and made me miss my raise. I never met these people. I only talked to them through the phone, and I went back to my paperwork. I always provided good service for them. There was no complaint. They just didn't like to have a customer service rep that wasn't an American-born, English-speaking person. After about 1 year, I left that job. I couldn't stand it anymore. I couldn't make it. You know, I could not make it through that hurdle, and it was sad, you know, because nobody ever looked into my story. Nobody ever looked into how much I was working and how hard I was working to get to where I was. Same happened in college. When I applied for Bridgewater State College, I presented my paperwork from my high school. It was translated. I did everything the way they wanted it to validate that I was prepared to get to Bridgewater State College. After I got an interview from one of the advisors there, I was asked to pay for and test out of their math, their history, and their English. Because my high school degree and me applying and paying for, you know, the college degree wasn't enough. They wanted to make sure that I could be in those classrooms with the other students. So I paid for those tests. I scored very well out of those tests, and I presented myself for the first day of class in my English 101 at Bridgewater, and after a 30-second conversation with the teacher, because, you know, everybody was supposed to introduce themselves, and she asked me outside, and I went outside, and she said to me, you know, you might want to take a couple of other classes before you take my class. I said, why? I said, well, you know, you could have some difficulties here. I said, I don't think so. You know, I'm ready to be here. And she said, well, I don't think so, but you think about it. At the end of 3.5 years, I had a 4.0 GPA. You know, I scored an A in that class, and she never apologized for that. She just had that impression. Just had that impression. And you know, again, today is different. You know, I'm talking in front of you, my English has gotten better, I run my own business, so I'm not anymore under the influence of other people making decisions for me or where my life is going to go. Plus I work in a small community, people that have got to know me. I'm a lot more confident in what I do and what I say and how I say it. But it came with quite a bit of sacrifice. A couple of things that happened to me because of what I've gone through. One of them is something that happened while I was working again in that plant as a customer service rep. There were a couple of shows going on TV that were very popular at the time. One of them was The Sopranos. I don't know if you guys remember that one. The unfortunate part is that I would be with customers going through the plant, and people would hand gesture me or mimic or repeat what I just heard on HBO that same night or the night before for fun. You know, I'm the Italian guy, there are no other Italians inside that plant, and therefore they felt entitled or just free to, you know, just blur that out. It was very embarrassing. Very, very embarrassing. None of the members of my family are part of the mafia. I wouldn't have to explain that. I shouldn't have to present myself as, by the way, you know, my record is clean. But because I was Italian, and I was an Italian immigrant, and I still spoke Italian, and I had an accent, many of the guys there felt entitled to do that. It was fun. Why aren't you laughing? Well, I'm not laughing because these people determined my check. You just made fun of me in front of them. But it was just for kicks. Why are you taking it like this? Well, it's a lot easier when you're not the recipient of the type of treatment. And you don't think there's any effect to it. That's the other thing too. There is always an effect to any word that is spoken to you. And there's also any effect, you know, from the words that you spoke to speak to other people. By the way, I've learned a lot from my experience in the way I treat other people today. So, God works through all things. You know, I am not the same kid, same arrogant kid that came here, thinking that he was better than others. You know, I treat people quite a bit different today. From the person that bags my groceries, that comes from Guatemala, to the person that, you know, pumps my gas, or you know, my financial advisor that is married to a Brazilian. You know, and everybody is okay in my eyes. Everybody is rightfully here, and I make the effort to come towards somebody that doesn't speak as well as I do today. Not the other way around. I don't expect them to get better. One thing that happened, unfortunately, one of the sacrifices I made to get better and to blend easier and to not have this in my life anymore was that I lost my body language. You know, when I go to Italy now and I see my uncles, my aunts, my cousins, you know, their expressions, their body expression, and the movements of it, you know, their facial expressions, their hands gestures. it's an art form. It really is. It adds so much to the language itself, and they enjoy it. And their personal space is zero. It's a wonderful thing to watch when you're comfortable in it. But here I had to lose it all. I gave it all up, and it's not coming back. Once it's gone, it's gone. I learned how to speak with my hands by my sides, from behind my back, across my chest. And I had to, so that I wouldn't be made, so that the focus of our conversation wouldn't be over my hand gestures because I was Italian. It would be over what we were talking about. Another thing that I've lost, unfortunately, was the passion of my own language to transfer to my kids. I made a conscious, unconscious decision of not teaching them Italian, because I didn't want them to grow up with an accent. Even in their English, they could have had an accent. Didn't want to do that. I told myself a long time ago that I was going to pay for private lessons if they ever wanted to learn Italian, they would have learned it as a second language, not as a first language. Because I didn't want them to go through what I went through. So that's another big loss. And it's unfortunate that we don't see we do stuff like this. We don't see the weight of our words. We don't see how we treat other people, especially the untouchable ones. The ones like me. White guy, straight, blonde, blue eyes. Well, how can I possibly hurt him? But you do. We do. There are many ways, and many of us can be put in the situation where the situation is reversed. So we have to be careful. Today is treating somebody as less than, but you never know when it's going to turn around. Now you know why it's so hard for me to speak in public. Because every word that comes out of my mouth, I have to measure. And I have to make sure that, that's something else that I have to do. I have to eliminate several words out of my vocabulary, because they don't come out right. And I was never able to perfect them. So it takes so much energy to go through all this. I have a special place for all those people that come here from other countries and try to establish themselves and try so hard to learn English as a second language. I have so much respect for what you do in this church, because you have taught other people English as a second language. It was one of the things that attracted me here. I'm a kid that was raised Catholic. I went to Catholic church, and when I moved here, one of the things that impressed me was that you had a night program for non-English speaking people. Out of volunteers. It wasn't paid, out of volunteers. And it's, I felt that there was a space for me here too. And you've always been very gracious with me. This is not a story about what's happening here, by any means. It's what happened to me and how it changed me. But again, this is what I have to offer to this series. And again, the best I can do is not repeat this type of behavior with other people, and teach my kids not to do it as well. Thank you.